Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Health Detective podcast. I'm Susan Birch, and today I'm talking to my good friend, Leon Bynoe. Leon is Dr. Leon Bynoe. He's an ophthalmologist. I never know if I can get that word out of my mouth properly. Anyway, Leon he's been on the podcast twice before, so we'll link to our earlier episodes. But today he's going to talk about his own personal health journey and some of the really important factors he's discovered about what humans should be eating, why we should be eating it, and in particular in relation to the Mediterranean diet. So, Leon, so awesome to see you again. Thanks for coming along again.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. So Leon's got an excellent Facebook page. I share a lot of his stuff on my own Facebook page. So I encourage everybody to go and make sure you check him out. And he's so passionate about this topic. I just love talking to him.
Yeah. So, well, thanks. Well, no, I mean, it's one of those things that, I just looked at where I was 7 years ago and how things were and how completely not optimistic I was about the future.
Yeah.
And wondering how I got there, 52 years old and just very unhealthy, even though I thought I did everything right. And, thankfully, because of people like you and a whole bunch of other people in this space, I've learned a lot of things about health and nutrition that I didn't learn in medical school, that they're not teaching in medical school. And then that sort of started me on a path to try and make everything sort of make sense and fit into, not just, the chemistry, but also the anthropology, the evolution, we were taught general scientific principles, but we were kind of in medical school just taught to don't even think about all that other stuff. Just this person has this symptom, prescribe this drug, never told to ask the question, why does this person have this problem? But when you look at things in a broader context and in terms of specifically in terms of human existence and evolution, and then you start to try and look at the things that we prescribe, the things that we recommend, the explanations we have for why things happen, a lot of what we're taught just doesn't make any sense. And in my quest to try to make sense of things, I've come to some ideas that people might think are kind of radical, but it all makes sense to me. So I'm going to talk about that today. And, I've titled this, "The Radically Anti-Evolutionary Mediterranean Diet is the Main Driver of the Diseases of Civilization." And I'm sure just me saying that has already lost me a lot of fans, but if you'll hear me out and just hear the case that I'm going to make for this. Okay.
All right. So do you want to set up your screen share, or I'm going to just let you take this away and talk about this, and then maybe at the end I'll ask any questions that might come up.
Sure. Let me share my screen. That's my lovely family.
Your beautiful, gorgeous family. Your daughter just qualified as a doctor.
Oh yeah, yes. This one right here. Yes, she's the newest Dr. Bynoe. She just graduated from medical school last week, and she's going to be training in obstetrics and gynecology. But okay, so let me go to the business at hand. So this is the outline, and I'll make this available to anyone who wants to have this, along with all the slides that I'm going to show. But basically, we've been hearing a lot of people in this space talk about an animal-based diet and how it cures all your problems, and it sure does seem to, low carb, low polyunsaturated fatty acid, how these things, people have been reporting amazing recovery of excellent health doing these things. But it seems to me like it's mostly framed as, yeah, this diet cured me. Okay. And I'm sure it feels that way, because it certainly felt that way to me. When I went from 7 years ago in October of 2017 at only age 52, and I was obese and hypertensive, and I had just gotten a pulmonary embolus, which is a clot that forms in the legs, and it went from my right leg to my lungs, and it can kill you, but thankfully mine wasn't that bad. But you know, if you block off the circulation to your lungs, I mean, you can die from that. And this is how I am at age 52. And then I'm wondering, if I did everything right, why did this happen? And thing is I was following the Mediterranean dietary pattern. I absolutely was on a plant-based diet. I was eating lots of whole grains and fruits and vegetables. I was avoiding red meat. I was eating mostly chicken and lean meats and fish and literally everything they tell you to do. And I was not eating junk food. Okay, I was not eating, you know, chips, and I mean, very rarely, you know, but I was doing what they tell you to do, and I end up like that. And plus, I was exercising. I was an avid runner since I was 17. I was running 4 to 6 miles every day and lifting weights, doing calisthenics, you know, so I was the poster boy for everything the doctors tell you to do. And I end up so sick at age 52. And so then, you know, my wife saw something about intermittent fasting, and I started looking into that. So we started doing that, and that sort of took us down the path of low carb and keto and avoiding vegetable seed oils, and you know, and I've been doing that for the last 6 years. And these have been the healthiest 6-year period of my life, including my teens and my 20s, because during these 6 years, I never get sick, I never get injured, I never, you know, I haven't had a headache in 6 years. I mean, it's just, you know, even in my teens and 20s, I would have those things, and literally none of those things happen. So, so I thought, oh, okay, so low carb, much more animal-based diet with a lot more meat and eggs and stuff, that cured me. And I mean, that's the way it sort of feels when you go from what I was to what I am and what I remain today. But the more I started looking into it, I started thinking I don't know so much it's that this diet cured me, but it was the Mediterranean diet I was following before that caused all of my problems. And when I start thinking about this, it all starts to make sense when you look at some factors. So, but just to show, here's a slide that sort of represents the Mediterranean diet with your pyramid, with your grains and bread and beans down at the bottom, lots of fruits here, your liquid oils, which they say in variable amounts. But look, minuscule, you know, the least amount of stuff you should be eating are, you know, red meats. You know, I guess they want you to eat more of this chicken stuff and fish. And they say daily physical activity and regular hydration. Okay, well, I was doing all that. Okay, and that left me a physical wreck. But none of this is natural for humans. None of this is normal for humans. None of this was even possible for humans for at least 99% of humanity's time on this planet, going back 2 million years to Homo erectus. And I can say that with confidence because the foods that you see on this slide literally didn't exist until very recently in human history. So and the thing is, the way that these foods are different to the foods that existed prior in our first 99% of our time on this planet, the ways that these foods differ is that they are high in 3 things. They produce 3 things in excess that we know is harmful to human physiology. And those 3 things are, there's way too much carbohydrate in the food that we have. This is the last 1% of our time on this planet. And we know that glucose wrecks your blood vessels if it's over a very small amount of, you know. And we know that polyunsaturated fatty acids wreck our bodies in several different ways. They destabilize our cell membranes. They collapse our mitochondria, they mutate our DNA, at least the aldehyde breakdown products do. So those are 2 things that this diet does in excess of what was possible for most of our time on this planet. And then the third thing is that it makes us chronically hyperinsulinemic. okay, which is a direct result of all the carbohydrates that are present in the foods that they're recommending. Okay, so and I make this and I show this to my patient because and people say, oh, but this is healthy, and I say, yeah, but this was impossible for most of our time on this planet. And what this slide is showing are the wild forms of food compared to what you go to Whole Foods or the grocery store and get today. Okay, and so we figured the wild forms of food would pretty much be all that existed before agriculture. Okay, and agriculture is only 12,000 years old or so, and everyone thinks that that's ancient, but it's not. It's not ancient at all. If you're considering humanity going back 2 million years to Homo erectus. Okay, so 12,000 years over 2 million, that's 0.6%. Okay, so that means for 99% of our time on this planet, if you wanted to go eat some corn, you were eating this stuff here, this little shriveled up looking thing that looks like grass. If you were going to get some potatoes, you'd get these little pebble things. If you wanted bananas, you'd get this little shriveled up thing full of seeds. This would be your peach here, which is about 90% pit. And what all these foods have in common is that the carbohydrate content is way lower than what you would get today. And that's because shortly after humans figured out agriculture, they figured out selective breeding. And selective breeding was the original genetic modification, okay? It's how we turned this shriveled up grass looking stuff into this nice carbohydrate, tasty, starchy food that we have now. But the cost was that we increased the carbohydrate content of all these foods. For example, this wild corn, it's called teosinte, okay? And this corn that we have now is about 1,000 times larger and has 4 times the carbohydrate content per gram as this stuff. So when I say the Mediterranean diet, what they're recommending now was impossible, this is what I'm talking about. Because if you went and gathered up all the grains and fruits and vegetables that they tell you to eat now, you would be gathering up this stuff, not this stuff. And all of the foods you had compared to what we have now, the carbohydrate content, it would be way lower. Okay, so that's number one. When I can confidently say for 99% of our time on this planet, which was before agriculture, 100% of our food was low carb. Okay, compared to what we have today, because we selectively bred for high carbs because that's what tastes good to us. Things taste better when they're starchy or when they're sweeter. But the fact of the matter is that we didn't have that. Now, going down here, you see these cooking oils, these vegetable oils. These things have only been around for a much shorter time even. Only about 200 years, which is 0.01% of human existence. Okay, so before, any cooking oil you would have would be coming from things like animal fat and maybe from fatty fruits like avocados and olives if we were able to mash them and get enough of it. But this stuff didn't exist, okay? Nor did any food that has the polyunsaturated fatty acid content anywhere close to these products. There's no food on this planet that had anything close to this until we invented this stuff. Okay, and then when you look at things like bread, pasta, beer, well, those things didn't exist until a few thousand years ago. So those foods, you weren't eating those at all. So right now, I've just shown that the Mediterranean diet, all this stuff that they're telling you to eat, literally didn't exist or existed in forms where the carbohydrate content was way lower and the polyunsaturated fatty acid content was way lower because we hadn't yet invented the vegetable oils. So that's number one. The Mediterranean diet was impossible for most of our time on this planet. And the way that it's different is that it has too much of these things, which we know are all bad for us. We know too much glucose is bad for our blood vessels. We know polyunsaturated fatty acids destabilize our cell membranes, collapse our mitochondria, and their aldehyde byproducts cause DNA mutation. We know that hyperinsulinemia is terrible for health. I mean, it does a bunch of things. It forces glucose into your cell, your muscle and fat cells. It probably inhibits regenerative autophagy, which is what you need to have your cell turnover, to replace old sick cells with new ones. Well, if you're chronically hyperinsulinemic, you're inhibiting that process. So the Mediterranean diet, when it's high carb content and it's vegetable oils as the predominant fat, is doing these three things. So, and these are three things that humans could not do for at least 99% of our time on this planet. So that is why I call the Mediterranean diet anti-evolutionary, because we didn't evolve in the last 12,000 years. We evolved over the last 2 million years. And I made a graph that sort of to illustrate that. So this is showing, human generations and how long we've had things. So this is Homo erectus, 100,000 generations. Homo sapiens is 15,000 human generations, okay? Agriculture, we didn't invent that until only 600 generations ago, okay? That's not that long. Bread was only 500 generations ago. Wine, beer, liquor. I mean, this is all relatively recent in human history. And the vegetable oils only 10 generations ago. And here, I made this diagram. This is if you took human existence as a 24-hour clock, okay? And so this is Homo erectus beginning, okay? Well, this is where agriculture first shows up. It would just be 8 minutes ago, okay? And the vegetable oils, which is in yellow, you can't even see it because it's like a little sliver in here. You can't even see it, okay? So this is when we did all our evolving, not here, okay? So now why is this so important? Well, all right, so first, let's talk about the vegetable oils, the vegetable seed oils. All right, so I made this graph. I just went to this food data center, USDA, and just looked this up. What is the fat components of these vegetable oils and of the natural fats? And you see, all fats are a combination of saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, fatty acid, and polyunsaturated fatty acid. Okay, all of them are, but they come in different amounts. Now, I think it was Holcomb, Zoe Holcomb, who was basically said that you can basically substitute out unsaturated with the word unstable. Okay, the more unsaturated the fat, the more unstable it is, and that's because when you have, what makes a fat unsaturated is if carbons are double bonded to each other, and these sites are prone to oxidation. And the more sites that you have of these, the more it is prone to oxidation. So if you only have one site of saturation, that's monounsaturated. But if the structure has several or more than one, then it's polyunsaturated. And in this table, we see that these oils or fats that occur in nature, like say avocado oil, that's a fatty fruit. So it's not actually a vegetable oil, it's a fruit oil. It's a fatty fruit, you can mash it, you can get oil. And it's 14% PUFA. So it's not super unstable. Okay, and then if you look at the animal fats, butter's only 4%. Beef fat is only 4%. Coconut oil, which is another fruit fat, is only 2%. Okay, these are oils that exist in nature. These oils up here are the vegetable seed oils, the oils that humans invented. Okay, because it takes a chemical extraction process to get oil out of a soybean or to get oil out of a kernel of corn. And we first did it about 200 years ago with the invention of cottonseed oil, whose original purpose was to lubricate the cotton gin. And it should have stayed that way, okay? But what you're seeing with these numbers is, look how high these numbers are for the man-made oils, for the human-made oils. Canola oil, which is one of the lower ones, is double avocado oil, okay? And all the way up to 78% PUFA with safflower oil, okay? But prior to us inventing these vegetable oils, there wasn't a food on this planet that had this percentage of polyunsaturated fatty acids in it, which means there were we didn't have oils that were this unstable, okay? And the reason why the stability of the oil is important, because when you oxidize these PUFAs, you end up with nasty compounds like aldehydes. And aldehydes are super toxic. Most people have probably heard of formaldehyde, which is the aldehyde that we use to preserve human corpses. Yeah, well, we're eating foods that turn into stuff like that, okay? And we know that these things are super toxic. Whereas the oils that exist in nature, the oils that you get from just mashing an avocado or pressing some olives, the PUFA content is so much lower, okay? And which means that these oils are much more stable, all right? Now, this is a table that I made illustrating how much sugar is in the foods that they tell us to eat, okay? Now, I call it a total body sugar unit, but it's basically a teaspoon. And I base that on the fact that, you know, a healthy blood sugar would be, say, 80 milligrams per deciliter. And the body pretty much wants it to not be much higher than that, because when you start getting much higher than that, then the glucose starts wrecking your blood vessels. Now, the thing is for an average size adult male with a body blood volume of 5 liters, 80 milligrams per deciliter comes out to 4 grams, or 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of sugar in all of your blood volume. And that's what all your body wants. And I would argue that's about all your body could ever get with the foods that existed before we started inventing stuff like this. Now, if you eat 2 slices of whole grain bread, you've just put 8 teaspoons of sugar into your blood. So now the first thing that needs to happen after you eat your whole grain bread, which is supposed to be healthy for you, the first thing your body has to do is get 8 teaspoons of sugar out of it, because it only wants 1. Okay, how about pasta? Well, now you've just put 10 teaspoons of sugar in there. Or mashed potatoes, 8. Okay, now again, understand, there wasn't a food on this planet that could put that much sugar into your blood at one sitting. Why? Because when your corn is like this, you know, and your wheat is like this, the carb content is so low, okay? So, but now they're telling you to eat this stuff several times a day. So they're telling you for breakfast, dump several teaspoons of sugar into your blood, force yourself to make a ton of insulin to get that sugar out, because if you don't get that sugar out of your blood, it's going to wreck your blood vessels. And that's basically what diabetes is, okay? And then 3 hours later, do it again, okay? Or eat some multigrain Cheerios and put over 5 times more sugar into your blood than your body wants there, okay? Or drink these beverages. Now, again, all of this was virtually impossible to do for 99% of our time on this planet, okay? You couldn't do it because the foods didn't exist, unless you somehow found a beehive and were able to just eat honey all day long, but that wasn't happening. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that, that this is anti-evolutionary, because prior to a very short period of time ago, you could not consume anywhere close to the amount of carbohydrates that the Mediterranean diet is advising you to consume. You could not consume vegetable oils because they didn't exist, okay? And you could not be chronically pouring out insulin because, again, the foods didn't exist that could trigger such a large insulin response, because carbohydrates are by far trigger the largest insulin response, and fat is very low by comparison. So too much glucose, too much PUFAs, and too much insulin, okay? And now as far as the vegetable oils, you might say, okay, well, I'll stop buying Wesson oil and corn oil and stuff. Problem is they put that stuff in everything. And this is a list, I saw this, I think this was from, what site did I get this from? I thought I included it on here. All right, but anyway, I got this from, I think it was either Food Lies or well, I can't remember which website, but I thought it was an excellent graphic showing basically they're putting the vegetable oils in everything. So you basically have to avoid these foods because if it has a label, chances are they've put vegetable oil in it. Okay, so this is a table showing, all of these foods that the Mediterranean diet says is just fine to eat. And here's, on this side is what I eat. Actually, there's a lot of stuff here I don't eat anymore. But again, it's just to illustrate a point here. Now, I'm not telling anyone that they need to eat what I eat. But what I want to focus your attention on are these two tables, these two columns here. How much sugar am I putting into my body with the food I'm eating? Look how low these numbers are, okay? And how much PUFAs am I putting in my body? Again, look how low these numbers are, okay? And then look at what the Mediterranean diet says is fine to eat. It says it's fine to use these oils. Matter of fact, unfortunately, the vegetable oils are the most predominant consumed fat in the United States, probably in just the Western world, but definitely in the United States. It is significantly higher consumed than animal fat, by a lot. And that wasn't always the case. 200 years ago, the amount of vegetable seed oil consumption was 0 because it literally did not exist. And now it is the predominant fat that we're consuming. Okay. And then, these are all things that they say you can eat as long as you're doing it in their nice pyramid and you're eating a bunch of nice small meals and all that nonsense. I do pretty much the opposite of that. But it's not so much the foods that I'm eating, it's how little sugar it puts into my body and how little PUFAs it puts in my body. And I would maintain that the numbers that you see here, these are the kind of numbers that existed for humans for the 2 million years before agriculture, okay? This is how much sugar the pre-agriculture people would be putting into their bodies because that's all the food that was available. Everything was low in carbohydrates. This is the amount of PUFAs you'd be putting into your body because the vegetable oils didn't exist, okay? But now they've told you do the exact opposite of all that. And then wonder why everyone's overweight and sick and aging before their time. So, okay. All right, so again, this is why I'm saying it's radically anti-evolutionary and not just that it's the opposite of what humans did, because I'm not the kind of person who thinks everything old is better. I don't. I mean, I'm glad we have antibiotics. I'm really glad we have sanitation and that we no longer drink water downstream of where we, where we use the river as a toilet. I mean, I'm glad for modernity. I'm not saying everything, has to be all that. But the point I'm making is that if humanity was doing something for 2 million years, and we evolved doing this thing, okay, that is what our physiology has evolved to handle, okay? And then if you try in such a short period of time to do the opposite of all of the conditions that forge our metabolism, that forge is probably the very reason why humans make insulin in the first place, the conditions of these first 2 million years before agriculture. If you try to then do the opposite of all those things, I don't see how you wouldn't expect that to make humans sick. Okay. All right. So let me go back to. So that's the case I'm making. I'm making the case that the Mediterranean diet is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. And I also want to make another point because it stresses, the Mediterranean diet stresses that we eat the most amount of the foods that we need the least, okay? Like, for example, if you look at this, they tell you they want it to be plant-based, okay? But the fact of the matter is, humans don't need to eat any plants. Now, I'm not saying you can't eat plants. I'm not saying that, I'm saying humans don't have to eat plants. Why do I say that? Well, because there is literally nothing essential that to humans that is found in plants that is not also found in animals, and typically in a more bioavailable and easier digested form. Okay, so there are no essential nutrients. that are found exclusively in plants. However, there are several essential nutrients that are only found in animal foods, okay? Then they also want you to base your diet on carbohydrates. Well, the fact of the matter is humans literally do not need to consume any carbohydrates. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. And I can say that with confidence because the only carbohydrate that humans really have any need for is glucose. And we can make it. We can make glucose from at least a dozen amino acids, and we can make it from propionic acid, which is a pretty ubiquitous fatty acid. So any need for glucose that we have, we can make it. Okay, but that's not the truth. That's not the case for fat and protein. That's not the case for fatty acids and amino acids. There are essential amino acids and essential fatty acids that if we don't consume them, we will get sick and die because we need them and we can't make them. Okay. Yet the Mediterranean diet is telling you to make most of your diet carbohydrates, which is what you see in these bottom columns. Okay. Even though we don't need them. We don't need them at all. All right. And then the final thing is that they tell you that they want you to eat these. Now I will give this graph credit. They put olive oil here, but actually in this country they're pushing the vegetable seed oils. They label them as being heart healthy, and then they think that as a selling point. So this column here would actually have a lot of vegetable oils in it because that's what they're recommending, and they recommend that based on a fallacy, which I'll go over shortly. About because it will lower your cholesterol if you eat these vegetable oils. Yeah, it will lower your cholesterol, but that's actually not a good thing. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But again, you don't need any of these oils. You absolutely do not need any vegetable seed oil. And I would go even further and say you do not need any plant-based oil, even the fruit oils, because yes, I mentioned that there are essential fatty acids, but there are no essential fatty acids that are found only in plant oils. Okay, alpha-linoleic acid and linoleic acid. Even though I was taught in medical school that they're essential, omega-3 and omega-6. Fact of the matter is they're not. Okay, they absolutely are not essential. They've done studies where they have people on a completely ALA and LA free diet, but they provide them with arachidonic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, which are two unsaturated fatty acids that you can get from animal-based foods, and people do just fine. Okay, so again, I'm not saying you can't consume these things, the olive oil or avocado oil. I'm just saying you do not need to consume these things. Okay, but that's not the case when we talk about animal-based foods. That's not the case when we talk about protein and fat. You absolutely need to consume animal-based foods, or at least supplement. But I would say that for most of human history, we didn't have supplements, so we pretty much had to consume animal-based foods, or else we would be deficient in essential nutrients. You absolutely need to consume fat. You absolutely need to consume protein. But yet this pyramid is so skewed towards carbohydrates and plants. Two things we do not need. Okay. So that's why I say it's anti-evolutionary, because it has been only possible in this small section of human history. As I said, agriculture, if human history was existence was a 24-hour clock, agriculture popped up at 8 minutes ago at 11:52 p.m. or 23:52 in 24-hour time. And the vegetable oils only showed up 8 seconds ago. 8 seconds. That is the total length of time that vegetable oils have existed. And yet they're telling you that you should eat this stuff because it's heart healthy. So what were we doing for those other 2 million years when vegetable seed oils didn't exist? Okay, well, we certainly weren't eating them. But this is based on this. So this is just sort of this is what I eat the most of. Okay. And this keeps me very healthy. Again, not saying you have to do what I do, but this is what I do, and it's been working great. Okay. Now, I use this picture to illustrate everything wrong with the cholesterol hypothesis. Okay. So as I said, one of the big selling points they have for why you should consume vegetable seed oils is because it will lower your cholesterol. And they then say lowering cholesterol equals decreasing cardiovascular disease, except that is 100% false. That is completely false. All right. Lowering cholesterol does not decrease cardiovascular disease. It is not healthy for your heart. It is not healthy for anything. Matter of fact, having a higher cholesterol is actually healthier. And so I'll explain this, but I just show this picture because this is me at age 47 versus age 58. And you can see my LDL was only 164 here. They probably would put me on a statin for that, but that wasn't too bad. And now it's, almost double that. Yet I would argue that I was at way higher risk for cardiovascular disease at age 47 than I am in this picture. Why? Well, let's look at their own numbers. I don't know how well this will show. This is taken from the Women's Health Study showing the hazard ratios of various factors for cardiovascular disease. And being obese raises your cardiovascular risk by 4.33, which means that you're over 4 times more likely to have a cardiovascular event just from being obese. If you're just overweight, you've already doubled your risk of cardiovascular event. The worst thing you can possibly be is diabetic. That raises your risk almost 11-fold, okay? Well, what is it for cholesterol? Well, let's see. For LDL, you've raised your risk 1.38, okay? Not double, not quadruple, not 11-fold, 1.38. Okay, so you have a 38% increased risk. Total cholesterol, 1.39. Look how low these numbers are. This should have been one of the first clues that cholesterol isn't causing cardiovascular disease. Because if it was, why would these hazard ratios be so low? Okay. Like, for example, cigarette smoking and lung cancer, the hazard ratios for that were like 15 to 35, meaning you were 15 to 35 times more likely if you were a heavy smoker to get lung cancer than if you were a non-smoker. When you see hazard ratios that are that high, yeah, then you could start thinking about maybe this might have a cause-effect relationship. But if it's under 2, if it's under double, the chances of there being a cause-effect relationship is actually worse than a coin flip. Okay, when they've actually done studies, further studies when things have hazard ratios below 2.0, and they did higher level studies to see is there a cause and effect relationship, 70 to 80% of the time, your hypothesis is wrong. So actually a coin flip is more reliable because at least that's 50-50. So if you have these sub 2.0 hazard ratio, the likelihood that these are actually causing anything, again, less than 50-50. But there's other data that shows that lowering cholesterol doesn't do anything for cardiovascular disease. There's the fact that people with the highest cholesterol on the planet, people with familial hypercholesterolemia, if they're metabolically healthy, meaning that they're not diabetic, they're not, hypertensive, if they are non-smokers, if they don't have a clotting disorder. So if these people are healthy, their mortality rate after the age of 60 is lower. They actually have fewer heart attacks. They actually have lower rates of cancer. All right. Now, yes, if they are diabetic or they smoke, yeah, they might have a heart attack in their 30s. And this is what I was taught in medical school. Oh, these people with these super high cholesterols, yeah, they're at risk of heart attack. Yeah, the ones who are metabolic, who have some other reason, some other high risk factor for cardiovascular disease. But if they are metabolically fit non-smokers without a clotting disorder, they are healthier. And here's the thing, it actually makes perfect sense why they might be healthier. Why? Because cholesterol I believe, is one of the most important substances in the human body. cholesterol is what the human body uses to make some other incredibly important substances, like vitamin D, like testosterone and estrogen and progesterone and aldosterone, all the sex hormones, the bile acids. All of these things you need cholesterol to make, okay? So the whole idea that cholesterol is this bad actor in the human body is completely absurd. So that's one thing. So this might explain why the people with the highest cholesterols, they get fewer illnesses, they get lower rates of cancer, because obviously they have enough cholesterol to make all these other important things. But then here's the other thing. They have never been able to show a convincing mechanism by which cholesterol is actually harmful to any human cell, and that is true for saturated fat as well. No mechanism, all right? They base this hypothesis on the fact that you can find cholesterol inside of atherosclerotic plaques, okay? But you know where else you can find cholesterol? Every single cell in the body. Cholesterol is everywhere. It's in your cell membranes, okay? So the fact that you find it inside atherosclerotic plaques tells you nothing about how it got there and why it's there, okay? So I often ask them, okay, so if you're saying that a high cholesterol is causing cardiovascular disease, tell me, how is it doing it? Is it just diffusing into the blood vessels? Probably not, because cellular integrity, cellular and tissue integrity is one of the things that is fundamental to life. I mean, the fact that a cell has things like receptors and channels and things that basically give it control over what gets in and what gets out. There are tight junctions between cells that determine what gets in and what gets out. When those systems break down, we become very sick and pretty much die pretty quickly. That's why things like Ebola virus are harmful to us, because Ebola virus can get past and go wherever it wants. So the idea that cholesterol is just going wherever it wants and is somehow just forcing its way into our vascular endothelial, into and in between our vascular endothelial cells and just forming these plaques is completely absurd, and it makes no sense biologically, okay? And that's because that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening at all. Cholesterol is there for the same reason you would find cholesterol in any place elsewhere. Like if you cut your finger and you got a clot and then you got a scab, yeah, you might find cholesterol there too, okay? But it's there because cardiovascular disease, something has damaged your blood vessels. And if you chronically damage your blood vessels, your body's going to be chronically trying to fix the damage. So you'll have an inflammatory reaction, which will produce, let's say, a clot, and that clot eventually will become a plaque, and then eventually cells will come in and remodel, and hopefully you end up with the same thing that you have had before the injury. But if you just keep injuring the same area over and over again, then that process is going to keep happening, and then that clot is going to become a plaque, and that plaque is just going to get bigger and bigger. And when it gets big enough to close off the blood vessel, then you have your heart attack, then you have your stroke, okay? But the clot is in response to damage. And what damages blood vessels? We know what damages blood vessels. Glucose, for one. Glucose damages blood vessels. So if your blood sugar is chronically high, you're damaging your blood vessels. High blood pressure damages blood vessels. And notice, these are all the things that have the super high hazard ratios. Hypertension, your risk is increased fourfold of cardiovascular event. Diabetes, almost 11-fold, okay? Well, we know hypertension damages your blood vessels. High blood sugar damages your blood vessels. Cigarette smoking, almost 400%. Okay, we know that damages your blood vessels. So all the things that we know damage your blood vessels also have the much higher hazard ratios. And the thing that we have no mechanism to show damages anything, they have the low hazard ratios, okay? So, and then finally, I told about how the mechanism is not there for the cholesterol hypothesis, the fact that the people with the highest cholesterol levels on the planet have lower rates of heart attack and stroke as long as they're otherwise healthy and don't smoke and don't have a clotting disorder. And then the final nail in the coffin just came out, I think, this year, where Dave Feldman's work and Nick Horowitz, where with the group of people, so-called lean mass hyper responders, and which honestly, and I'll give a little background to this, I just think that means normal. But anyway, lean mass hyper responder, these are people who adopted a keto, carnivore, or low carb, low PUFA diet, and they became metabolically fit, physically fit, but their cholesterol shot up. Okay. And so they did a study with these people who all are otherwise metabolically fit and healthy, physically fit, but they might have cholesterols that are 400, LDLs 300, 400. And they actually did studies. They did coronary calcium scores and I think they did other ways to measure plaque burden, and found that these lean mass hyper responders, these people with insanely high cholesterol levels, had no excess plaque burden compared to controls. Okay. So if cholesterol was causing cardiovascular disease, you would expect that these people would have much more of a plaque burden, yet they don't. Okay. So so as far as I'm concerned, the cholesterol hypothesis is debunked. It is completely invalid. Cholesterol is not causing heart disease. It's not causing cardiovascular disease. It's not causing any harm to humans. And I honestly think that our problem isn't hypercholesterolemia. I think our problem is hypocholesterolemia. And why do I say this? Because here's why. Okay, we first gained the ability to measure serum cholesterol in 1955. Okay. Before that, we don't know what anyone's cholesterol was. But by 1955, our diet had already fundamentally changed to the opposite of what our dietary pattern was for 99% of our time on this planet. Okay. Again, for 2 million years, we were hunter-gatherers. We were absolutely on an animal-based diet. And the reason I can say that quite confidently is because when your plants are like all this stuff, no, you had to be getting most of your calories from the woolly mammoths and stuff, because you're not going to be getting enough calories from these pebbles that were potatoes, or this grass that was what corn was. Okay, so we were on an animal-based diet. Okay, we were eating mostly saturated fat. We were not consuming any vegetable oils, which we know lowers your cholesterol. We know that that's an effect, and actually they use that as a selling point. So the point I'm making is that by the time we first started measuring human serum cholesterol in 1955, we were already on a dietary pattern that would be predicted to lower serum cholesterol. There was already the predominant diet in Western cultures. We were already consuming the liquid oils. We were already consuming bread and pasta and beer, and we were already doing these things that we know would lower serum cholesterol. So the point I'm making is that, what if we had been able to measure serum cholesterol for the 2 million years before agriculture? What would it have been? Well, I think we could accurately predict that it would have been much higher. Why? Because no one had any vegetable oil to lower it. Okay, no one had any of these of the phytosterols that we have in these foods and these processed foods, had none of this stuff that we know lowers cholesterol. So I would argue, if we had a fossil record of serum cholesterol of the hunter-gatherers, it probably would be very much like what the lean mass hyper responders are today. That is what I believe. And as I said, the data, the evidence to suggest that is just how fundamentally different the diet was. Our diet was naturally low in PUFAs because we hadn't invented high PUFA foods. Okay, we hadn't invented the vegetable oils. So we didn't have anything that would lower our cholesterol. And so what I think we're seeing with the lean mass hyper responders, we're just seeing what I think is just the natural state of humans. The natural state when we eat the diet that humans are supposed to eat, I believe would cause our cholesterol to be higher than what we have with this diet that artificially suppresses our cholesterol. Okay. So I actually think, when I showed this photo here, I think this guy on the right is normal, not this guy. This guy was eating the abnormal anti-evolutionary vegetable seed oil laden high meal frequency plant-based diet. And this is how I end up at age 47. And then here I'm doing the opposite of all that, and my cholesterol is way higher, and yet I take zero medications. I never get sick. I never get injured. I'm like almost never sore. I mean, let's put it this way. I haven't had to take any medication of any kind, not even an aspirin, not even a Tylenol, nothing in 6 years. Whereas back here when I was 47, my knees were always hurting. My lower back was always hurting. I had, knee arthritis, lower back arthritis. I had, I was overweight, obviously. I was hypertensive, all of these things. And I'm doing this Mediterranean diet. And my cholesterol was pretty good, at least according to what the doctor's saying. But I would argue this on the right is what is normal, because my dietary pattern reflects a lot closer the dietary pattern of most of human existence in the 3 specific ways that I think are most important. In the low amount of glucose that I put into my body, the small amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids I put in my body, the low amount of insulin that my body is making, because I'm not dumping carbs that make you have to make a ton of insulin. And then the final thing, and this isn't, I don't know if it's that important, but also I think meal frequency matters. This whole idea that we need to be eating several meals a day, 3 meals a day with snacks in between, again, that did not exist for hunter-gatherers. Why? Because no one's that good at hunting and gathering, that they could be getting enough food that they could be eating around the clock. And so all those are the things that I think are what made the difference between me being so healthy. But as I said, my focus has shifted from me thinking that what I do now cured me and turned me into the guy on the right. No, it's the Mediterranean diet that turned me into the guy on the left. Okay. And the point is that had I eaten the way humans are supposed to eat, low carb, low PUFA, low meal frequency, okay, basically living life, secreting only small amounts of insulin because the foods that I'm eating aren't making me spike enormous amounts of it, not eating around the clock. If I've been, and this is what humans did for 2 million years, I would have been like the guy on the right my whole life, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. I don't tell people do my diet as a cure. I tell them stop doing your diet because that's the cause, okay? These are just some other things that these come from posts that I make, just trying to illustrate a point. The elephant is on a plant-based, low-fat diet, and they eat, they spend about 18 hours a day eating. A lion eats every 3 to 4 days. It's animal-based, high-fat, low meal frequency. And interestingly enough, the experts recommend the elephant dietary pattern. They recommend plant-based, multiple meals a day, low-fat. And I did that, and that left me like this, the guy on the left. Last 6 years of doing the lion dietary pattern, animal-based, high-fat, low meal frequency, low PUFA, no vegetable oils, and this is how I stay. Okay, and again, a lot of people look at the pictures and they're, oh, you have good genes. No, I have the same genetic makeup in the right that I had on the left. Okay, so my genes didn't change. Okay, it's 100% from eating what humans are supposed to eat. But the point again is that I never should have been like the guy on the left. If I ate the way I believe history, anthropology, biochemistry, all of these sciences put together tells you what humans are supposed to eat, because it's the way humans ate for 99.4% of our time on this planet. Had I been doing that, I would have been like this or better at age 47, as opposed to being like this at age 59, and I just turned 59 last week. Actually, no, 3 days ago. Guess I'm getting older. And now, so And here it is. I mean, 4 decades of following this pattern, which again is the opposite of what humans could are supposed to do. It is the opposite of what it was even possible for humans to do. Because again, the foods didn't exist, vegetable oils didn't exist, the ability to eat around the clock didn't exist. All right. So for all those years before modernity, we were obligate intermittent fasters, and we were intermittently secreting insulin. And that was because we were on a low carb, low PUFA diet, low meal frequency diet. Okay. That is what humans did because that is all humans could do. Okay. But 4 decades of doing what the experts tell you to do produce this. Okay. And I'm only 47 in this picture. The last 6 years, and these are probably the foods I eat the very most of, you know. Again, not telling people you got to do what I do, but I'm just stating the facts. The last 6 years of doing this has produced this. Okay. And again, it's not just that I'm physically fit. It's not just that I'm muscular and lean. I'm talking metabolically fit. Okay. My blood pressure stays perfect. My blood sugar stays perfect. I'm insulin sensitive. Okay. My HDL stays high. My triglyceride stays super low. And my waist to height circumference ratio is well below 0.5. And I specify those 5 things because those are the 5 factors that define metabolic fitness. And if you if you have 2 of those things bad, then it's considered metabolic syndrome. Okay. And only 1 in 12 adults my age can check all 5 boxes. All right. And when I was 47, I couldn't check all 5 boxes. All right. When I was 47, I was obese and my waist to height ratio was more than 0.5 and I was hypertensive. Okay. So it's not just that I'm physically fit from eating the way humans are supposed to eat. I am metabolically fit. Okay. Oh, also note what's missing from metabolic fitness. LDL cholesterol isn't in there, and neither is total cholesterol. Okay. HDL made the cut, triglycerides made the cut, but LDL and total cholesterol didn't make it. Why? I think the hazard ratios tell you why, because they're not causing anything. That's why their hazard ratios are so low. But anyway, so it's not just physical fitness, it is metabolic fitness. It is also immunologic fitness. Okay. I mean, my immune system is orders of magnitude better than when I was in my 40s. You know, when I was in my 40s, if there was cold or flu season, I would get the cold or the flu. Okay. I had chronic sinusitis. I had, I had all these things. I have none of those things the last 6 years. And then there are other things. I mean, things that I wouldn't have even have expected to happen. Back in my old days, I was susceptible to sunburn. You know, I lived down here in Florida. And if I didn't wear sunscreen, I would burn on my nose and my ears and my shoulders. Okay. But for the last 3 or 4 years, I never wear sunscreen and I never burn. Never. Okay. And I play tennis. I usually play tennis in the middle of the day, you know, during when most people are eating lunch, like between my morning and evenings sessions seeing patients. I take a ball machine out to a tennis court and I hit for an hour and a half or 2 hours, however long I have. And I purposely do it in the sun, and I purposely go shirtless, and I purposely wear no sunscreen. And I never burn. But you know what else happened? I doubled my vitamin D. Because back in this picture, my vitamin D level was as low as 18, which is like 30 is what they consider the lower limit of normal. All right. Now, why might have I been vitamin D deficient? Well, it might have had something to do with my cholesterol being 164. Okay. Because you need cholesterol to make vitamin D. And it also has to do with the fact that I'm covered up and I'm wearing sunscreen. So now I'm blocking my body's ability to make vitamin D. Okay. But they say, but if you're in the sun, you're going to get sunburn and then you can get skin cancer. I don't think so. I don't think it's the sun that causes harm. I think it's your diet. Okay. Because every cell in my body is fundamentally different in these last 6 years than they were here. Why? Because this body, which was consuming vegetable oils, well, those vegetable oils destabilize the cell membranes. They collapse the mitochondria. They cause DNA mutation. So now every cell in my body, including my skin cells, are abnormal. Okay. And now when you take this abnormal skin and put it in the sun, yeah, that's probably why it burns, because it's not normal skin. Okay. We've had the sun for 2 million years. If the sun was inherently harmful to humans, it would we just all die from skin cancer? Because no one was wearing sunscreen until about 100 years ago, because we hadn't invented it. Okay. Was skin cancer such a big problem? No. But you know what else? What wasn't a problem? Vitamin D deficiency wasn't a problem. It's a huge problem now. And that's probably because we're doing everything to lower our cholesterol, which limits the substrate that you need to make vitamin D. And we're wearing sunscreen, which blocks the sun from allowing your skin to synthesize vitamin D. And then we're washing our bodies, soaping up with, our whole bodies with soap, which can leach the vitamin D out of your skin. So we're doing all these things. So it's no wonder my vitamin D level was so low. Whereas now my vitamin D doubled and I don't take supplements. All right. And that happened with my cholesterol doubling. And you know what else doubled? When my cholesterol doubled, my testosterone level doubled. And that's another thing. I can't turn on the TV without seeing a commercial for talking to men of a certain age. And if you probably have low T and you have to take testosterone replacement. And it actually is a fact. I mean, testosterone levels in men have been decreasing by 1% per year for the last 50 years. So something is lowering our cholesterol. Lowering our testosterone. Well, I think it's the same. I think at least part of it is our drive to lower our cholesterol. I think that's one thing that's lowering our testosterone. Because when I stopped worrying about lowering my cholesterol, 2 other very important compounds doubled as well. My vitamin D and my testosterone. So anyway, I just show this picture. I posted this. Had I continued eating the way the experts advise, I would not be like this at age 59. And that's just a fact, okay? So, and again, it's not just the physical fitness, it's the metabolic fitness, it's the immunologic fitness. It's the fact that I don't get injured anymore. I don't have arthritis anymore. I don't get sick anymore. I don't get rashes anymore. I don't get sunburn anymore. None of these things I get. And I say it's because not so much that what I do cured these problems, but the diet, the Mediterranean diet that the experts are telling you to do, caused all of those problems. And all I've done these last 6 years is to stop causing my problems. And this I just put here for fun because, we're all 3 of us in this photo are doctors, okay? And so how do you evaluate expert advice? I'm not saying this should be the only way, but there's a saying, doctor, heal thyself, okay? And if these guys are telling you, giving you advice, nutrition advice, and this guy is telling you to do the opposite, I mean, I would certainly be interested in what the guy in the middle has to say. And I don't do this to shame anybody because, again, this was me. I was right. I was just like everyone else 6 years ago, 10 years ago. But the point is if you eat what humans are supposed to eat, and I do believe red meat is one of those things humans are supposed to eat, you just get so much healthier, okay? I wasn't like this in my 30s. And I'm much closer to 60 now than I am to 30. And this is how I am from eating what humans are supposed to eat. So that, in summary, is my hypothesis that the Mediterranean diet is completely backwards. It is anti-evolutionary and radically so. It is the opposite of everything humans should be doing. And when I put it to the test and do what I believe humans are supposed to do, it has produced the healthiest 6-year period of my life. And it's not just me. There are lots of people who have the same results as myself, my wife, my children are doing this, and they are way healthier than their peers, and they stay way more fit than their peers, and they don't get sick. We were just exposed to, my daughter, when she graduated from medical school last week, and one of my family members had COVID. and got very sick from it. And we were all together. We shared an Airbnb, for the 2 days that we were there for the graduation. And my sister got pretty sick from that. I haven't had a sniffle, nothing. My son actually he had like a little drainage or something, so he might have caught the infection, but he was still playing tennis every day in the middle of the day for 3 or 4 hours. He's a professional tennis player. Training had no effect on his training. I mean, he was just fine. And so this is how people who are metabolically fit, who eat what humans are supposed to eat, this is how our bodies respond to COVID. Okay. And this isn't the first time, because back in 2020, before the COVID vaccine came out, and I was still seeing patients, and I was exposed at least twice to people who were confirmed to have COVID. Okay. Before the vaccine, before anything, not even a sniffle, nothing. Okay. Had nothing wrong with me. And again, this isn't my genetics, because in my old life, when I was like this guy, I absolutely would have gotten sick. I would have gotten sick. I would have been laid up in bed, because when I got the flu, I mean, it was terrible. And again, last 6 years exposed to COVID now at least 3 times, and nothing happened to me. Okay. So again, it's not just the physical fitness. It's not just that, that I have muscles and that I'm pretty lean. It's that I have an immune system that is every bit as healthy as my physical fitness. That's every bit as healthy as my metabolic fitness. All of these things have come together, and all I have done is try to eat the way I believe humans are supposed to eat, with respect to 3 specific things: low carb, low PUFA, no vegetable oils, and low meal frequency. And that has the added effect of keeping your body secreting only small amounts of insulin. Okay. Because, it's not just the sugar that damages your body. It's also chronic hyperinsulinemia causes damage as well. So just those 3 things have given me health that I never imagined I'd have at age 59. It's been better health than I've had at any other time in my life. So this is the hypothesis, this is the evidence, this is the rationale that I show for why I call it the radically anti-evolutionary Mediterranean diet. Because if you put all the data that we have together, I don't see how you can come to any other conclusion, because it was impossible to do anything resembling what the nutrition experts are telling you to do. You could not consume the amount of carbohydrates that we consume now, because the foods didn't exist. You could not consume several meals per day with snacks in between, because the ability to get food that way didn't exist. You could, you just couldn't do these things. And our bodies adapted because of that environment. I'll make this my last point. My hypothesis is that the whole reason humans evolved to make insulin is because of the food environment we found ourselves in. Okay. For most of our time on this planet, food was low carb and it was hard to come by. Okay. And so before agriculture, you might hunt, gather, get some food, and then you might not eat for days, because you had to go out and get the food or hunt it or something. So you weren't, you would eat, and then there could a significant amount of time might pass before you could eat again. And I hypothesized that that's the reason we make insulin, because you would eat that meal, insulin, you would secrete a small amount of insulin. That insulin would make you store some of that energy that you took in as fat. You would live off of that fat until you could get that next meal. That's exactly what the lion is doing. The lion hunts down, kills a gazelle or whatever, eats it, and then probably sleeps for 20 hours. And then, but 3 or 4 days pass before they hunt again. Why can they do that? Because their body fat is their source of energy until they can get that next meal. And that's what I think, that's the reason we make insulin. But why do we make insulin now? Why would we even need to make insulin if you're eating foods like this, if you're eating potatoes, which will dump a ton of carbohydrates into your bloodstream, which your body has to get out. Now you have to spike an enormous amount of insulin just to get sugar out of your blood. Sugar, glucose that you couldn't possibly put there in those amounts with the foods that existed prior to agriculture. So now insulin has gone from a survival hormone to survive a low carb, low meal frequency of food environment. It has gone from that to becoming a detoxifier of the enormous amounts of glucose you're putting into your blood from our modern high carbohydrate, high meal frequency dietary pattern. Okay. And I say that that was never supposed to be insulin's role. Insulin's role was never supposed to be, oh, they just ate a bowl of pasta and dumped 10 teaspoons of sugar into the blood. Now the beta islet cells have to make a ton of insulin to get that sugar out, or else you're going to wreck your blood vessels. That was never supposed to be insulin's role. All right. And so what happens? The beta islet cells of the hunter-gatherer was maybe putting out a small amount of insulin every few days. Now, the beta islet cells in the pancreas of the modern person eating this diet is pouring out insulin morning, noon, and night just to get all this carbohydrates out of the blood. And then they say, well, what is the mystery of type 2 diabetes? I think it's quite simple. The beta islet cells probably just wear out. They were never supposed to be making that much insulin that often. Okay. It was never supposed to be a thing. It could never possibly be a thing for 99% of our time on this planet. Because the foods that you didn't have the high carb foods that could do that. So I try and put everything I do into that context. I think we can enjoy, all the benefits of modernity and the things we've learned, but we also can't ignore that our bodies and our physiology and our metabolism evolved under very specific situations and scenarios. Low carb, low meal frequency, and no vegetable oils. Okay. So low PUFA. And I don't think you can take 2 million years of our bodies adapting to that scenario and then turn around and do the opposite of all that, high carb, high PUFA, high meal frequency, and then expect to thrive. So that's the hypothesis in short, or as short as I can make it, that it's not that my diet is the cure. The Mediterranean diet is the cause. And the sooner we stop trying to go against 2 million years of evolution and just force this on humans, I think the healthier we'll be. That has been my experience. That has been my wife's experience. That has been the experience of countless people that you can go on YouTube and find people telling stories of how they radically improved their health just by low carb, low PUFA, low meal frequency, just by doing these kind of things and no vegetable oils, curing all kinds of things, chronic depression, chronic GI reflux, lupus, all the autoimmune disease. I mean, causing regression of all these things, diabetes. Plenty of people are doing this. And what they all have in common is that the diet that they switch to more closely mirrors the diet that human physiology evolved under, which is the opposite of this Mediterranean diet that they're telling you to eat. So anyway, that's it. That's the hypothesis. And I'll stop the share now and go back to you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. That was absolutely amazing. And as we went through, I made a few questions, but I think you pretty much answered all those questions, on the way through. I'll just make a comment about my own health and cholesterol. So one of the things is you're talking in US units. So in New Zealand, we have different units. So my LDL cholesterol is 16.9 in New Zealand, which is getting up around 700 in US units. So I always say I'm a world champion at something, and that's having high cholesterol. I have had remarkably good health my whole life. I'm currently on a course of antibiotics due to being bitten by a cat last week, so I have to take antibiotics for that. In my adult life, I've only ever had one other course of antibiotics, which was for a tooth infection. I've had the flu twice in my life, in 1980 and in 2018.
And here's the thing, Sue. I would argue it's because of your 700 cholesterol. I think it is. But I truly believe that, that's insanely good health. And
Yeah.
I think it's because you have more than enough cholesterol to make vitamin D. You have more than enough cholesterol to make your sex hormones, to make your bile acids, to make cortisol. I mean, you just look at the list of things that you need cholesterol to make. You have enough cholesterol, and because you're not consuming the vegetable oils, now you have cell membranes that are stabilized by saturated fat and cholesterol like they're supposed to be. Whereas when you have a diet that's high in the vegetable oils, now the PUFAs, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, kick out the cholesterol and the saturated fat, and now your cell membranes are unstable. So you have the absence of that. You have the absence of vegetable oils wrecking your mitochondria and causing their collapse. You have the absence of these aldehydes causing DNA mutation. And the people with the highest cholesterol, yeah, their cancer rates were way lower as well. That's the other thing they found in these people with high cholesterol. And that makes perfect sense too, because, there are a couple of things that you see that are very common in cancers. You see some DNA mutation, and you also see mitochondrial collapse. It's almost a universal finding. I think it is a universal finding, mitochondrial collapse. And those are two things that the vegetable oils do. As a matter of fact, there is one aldehyde, 4-hydroxynonenone, which reliably produces the most common DNA mutation, what's considered a cancer hotspot. This 4-hydroxynonenone reliably produces a mutation, this identical mutation. And this is a breakdown product of these high PUFA vegetable seed oils. And they're telling you to consume this stuff to make your heart healthier based on the false idea that because it lowers your cholesterol, it's protecting you from heart disease, except it's not. So I'm just saying that the way 2 years ago, I might have said, framed it as, oh, your diet cured these things. But no, I think that your health and my health is partly because our cholesterol is high. All right. My vitamin D was, my testosterone runs over 1,000 nanograms per DL, I think it is. That's double what's considered the lower limit of normal for a man half my age. Okay. And I know my testosterone was not that high. I didn't start measuring until, I was already starting to do this. But early on when I started to do this, it was the first time I measured it, I think it was like in 2020 or something. It was 700 and something. And then I measured it again, maybe a year later, it was over 900. And then the last one, it was over 1,000. But I would I'm almost positive, had I measured it before I changed my diet, I mean, there was nothing in my body, the way I was built or anything, that would make you think that it was high. I would bet it was just like everybody else's, my age, probably in the 400s, and now it runs over 1,000. And I think that's because my cholesterol is high. Okay. So yeah, I'm just saying that I've just changed my thinking away from thinking of what I do as a cure to the realization and the conviction that no, doing the opposite of what humans are supposed to do is the cause of our problems. It is the reason you have these problems.
I love how you've reframed that. I think that is absolutely spot on. I think you've really nailed something there that we should be really considering. I just, for any woman watching this podcast, I just want to say I've also haven't had any menopause symptoms. I've never had, I'll be 66 at my next birthday. I've never had hot flushes. None of those kind of symptoms that that we hear women experiencing all the time. So I do think that there is something really of value, you know, probably the cholesterol has helped with.
All of your sex hormones, all
Yep.
of them you need cholesterol to make them.
Yeah.
And so like Tamara, she did have menopause symptoms, but this was before she changed her diet. So all this stuff started happening. I'd have to ask her, but I don't know how it is now. But the point is that cholesterol, I mean, if there's nothing else I'm able to accomplish in all that I do, if I can get people to stop being afraid of cholesterol, I mean, that is so important to me. I wear my high cholesterol like, I mean, I wish I had yours, but I mean, the highest mine has ever been, the highest my total has ever been was like mid 400s, and the highest my LDL has been is like in the mid 300s. Here's an interesting thing. This is just because I saw who presented this. I'm always watching, you know, I made a post about the people who are my influencers. And actually, I want you to put that link in the description to that post, because I want people to know the people who helped me, the people like you. And I'll just email you the link directly to that post, because I put this, you, Paul Mason, Chafee, Ken Berry. And Ken Berry was actually one of the people who sort of inspired this change in my thinking, because he refers to, you know, he called the proper human diet.
Yeah.
But the only thing I feel like I wanted to go further than Ken, and I wanted to say, yeah, you're right about the proper human diet, but that also must mean that the Mediterranean diet is the improper human diet. And I want to start pushing that narrative, that it's not so much that you know, you got to do what I do, but that what they're telling you to do is improper for humans. It was improper for humans because it was impossible for humans. Humans couldn't do what they're telling you to do. The foods didn't exist. The availability of food to be eating around the clock didn't exist. There was no food on this planet that would make you spike insulin like a bowl of pasta will do. That food, unless it was just pure honey, which again, we know nobody lived off that. So I want to, you know, he talks about the proper human diet, and I want to talk more about the improper human diet, because I want my patients to start internalizing this as to thinking that they're doing something that is so abnormal for humans, and that their bad health is the cause of this. Okay. And I also don't want them thinking that they got to do exactly what I do to cure themselves, because they don't. You know, you can eat plants. I mean, I don't want anyone to get the idea that I'm saying that you shouldn't eat plants. I mean, I personally think Anthony Chafee is right. Pretty much everything he says about plants is correct. But even conceding that, I'm still not saying that, okay, but if you want to eat plants, you can. I would say just try to be careful. Try not to be eating plants that have a ton of oxalates in them, and, you know, don't be having spinach in your smoothie all the time, because it's just not good for you, you know. So you can, but the point I want to make is that you don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. And the whole nutrition expert space is making it seem like you're going to be doing yourself harm unless you're eating lots of fiber and lots of plants and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I've never been healthier, and I eat none of that stuff. And I was at my most unhealthy when I did exactly what they tell you to do. So it's important for me people to reframe their thinking, because I don't want people to think that, oh, I'm going to change my diet, get in shape, get healthy as a quick fix, and then go back to what I did before. No, I want them to never even think about going back to what they did before, because what they did before is the cause of all their problems. Okay.
That's such a vital point. Leon, just before we wrap it up, and I know what you're going to say, and it's just going to be a repeat of what you have been saying, but I think it's a really important point for New Zealand and the health crisis that we have in New Zealand at the moment. It's a very sensitive topic, but our Māori health is abysmally low overall. And I just want to go back talking about those graphs that you showed, the exposure that we've had to these kind of modern food, convenience foods. And Māori have only been exposed to those foods for 180 years, you know? And this is what they're getting, basically a version of that handout of that Mediterranean diet handed to them when they have diabetes, heart disease, all these chronic health conditions, and they've just been handed that out and being told, eat less, eat this crap, and exercise more. And it's not working. And I think this message is so vital to get out there. And I hope that everybody who watches this will please really share this podcast with, at least, one or two other people. Because I think.
Oh, this is vital. I think that is what our Western diet has done to indigenous and, indigenous populations to me, it's like a Holocaust, right? The fattest place on earth, I think the country Nauru, and also the Pacific Islanders, Samoa, all these places within one generation went from healthy, vibrant people, and then within one generation of our dietary pattern, become some of the fattest, sickest, unhealthiest places on earth from our diet. And this is why I do what I do. I actually, and I don't just do it I specialize in retina, and I have incorporated this into my treatment of retina because I ask the question. Like right now, the most common thing that I do as a retina specialist is I inject drugs that are called anti-VEGF agents. VEGF stands for vascular endothelial growth factor, okay? It's a mediator of inflammation. And in certain eye diseases, certain retinal diseases, the eye, for some reason, is pouring out a lot of VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, okay? And of course, we have drugs that bind to VEGF and block its action. And so you can treat the patients, because when eye secretes too much VEGF, the macula will become swollen. And when it's swollen, it doesn't work well. And then they don't see as well. And then if I inject a drug into their eye that binds to this VEGF and blocks it, the swelling goes down, the vision comes back, and it works great. But why don't we ever ask the question, why is the eye making so much VEGF? Okay, why is it making so much mediators of inflammation? Well, why do we usually make mediators of inflammation? You make inflammation in response to something causing damage. Okay, that's what the body does. You cut yourself, you get an inflammatory response. So you'll have higher VEGF level. If I cut my finger, I'm sure you'll have higher VEGF levels at that cut, and eventually it'll heal. So that's the reason why we have inflammation.
Or something cat bites you on the calf.
Yes. Something causes damage. An infection causes damage, or high blood pressure causes damage, or smoking, or something, or a toxin. But you have mediators of inflammation. You have an inflammatory response because it's responding to damage. So what if it's your diet that is damaging you, or at least contributing to it? And I have several patients, and I've posted these on Facebook. People who come in, their macula is swollen, and the treatment would be to inject an anti-VEGF agent to block the VEGF so their macular swelling will resolve. And a lot of these people are diabetic or they have macular degeneration, but it's clear their eye is secreting too much VEGF and their macula is swelling. So I talk to patients, particularly the ones with diabetic eye disease and vascular occlusive disease, where they basically like what I had in my leg, a pulmonary embolus, except it's kind of happens in the blood vessel in the retina. Sort of like that, except it's on the venous side. But anyway, but the point is, I tell them that this drug blocks a mediator of inflammation. And I said, the human body tends to have an inflammatory response because something causes damage. And it's doing this thing to try to repair. But what if your diet is at least partly or all the thing that's causing the damage to which your body is responding with this inflammatory response? And what if you changed your diet to one that no longer does that, and your VEGF levels went down, And now I don't have to inject an anti-VEGF in your eye because now your macula is not swollen because your VEGF load is down because your diet has been changed. What if we could do that? And so when patients come in and they have this swelling, I offer, if it's not too bad, I mean, if it's really bad, then because I don't want them to lose sight. But if it's like pretty early on, I will have this talk with them, and I will talk to them about what their diet does. And I will tell them that their diet causes damage and damage causes inflammation. And I said, maybe if you change your diet and you come back and your swelling's gone, then I won't inject you. And
Is there an age, like, is there a sort of deterioration over age where, I think I'm trying to say, does it matter how old I mean, we would both agree you should change your diet regardless of your age, but in terms of the macular degeneration, would an older person see?
Yes, absolutely. Now,
Right.
what it's not going to do, the degenerative part, I mean, who knows? I mean, obviously, the best first step for any problem is to stop causing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever retinal cells and pigment epithelial cells that have already been lost from the years of damage, yeah, I'm not going to tell them that they can get that back. But the fact that their macula is swollen from VEGF being there, okay, and if I tell them, if maybe you can lower your VEGF levels by making your diet less inflammatory, and less inflammatory means you make less VEGF, and the swelling goes down, that we can treat. And as I said, I have several patients who have done exactly that. They've saved themselves having me stick a needle in their eye every month. Okay. And they have, a lot of times they have different incentives for it. Like, like the people who don't have insurance are particularly keen to this because this stuff is expensive. And I don't know how the healthcare system is there, but healthcare is very expensive here, and these drugs are super expensive. I mean, we have one that's not so expensive, but still. And so they're highly motivated. So I tell them what specifically about their diet I believe is causing damage, and damage is causing the inflammatory response. And if you change these things, maybe, you come back, and if your macula's flat, I'll just hold off on doing any treatment unless your macula swells again. And I have people who are years out, who, were years out, and I never had to stick a needle in their eye. And if they've gone anywhere else, or to anyone who wasn't like-minded, like me, who did just what I was trained to do. You see swelling, you inject a VEGF, then that would have been the course that we would have taken. I always say it is way better. The first step should always be to not cause. And not causing is always going to be superior to causing and then curing. That is the main message I have with my whole thing about the Mediterranean diet being a cause. I recently wrote a post where I made up a word. I don't know if you saw that one. The opposite of a panacea is a panaiatia. I just looked up what Greek was for cause, and I think the Mediterranean diet is a panacea. Not that my diet now is a panacea. I just stopped causing all of my problems. And what I am now is what happens when you stop causing all these problems. I tell people, and I get compliments all the time, and I'm flattered. People say they can't believe how old I am. They can't believe I'm 59, and I'm flattered by that. But I tell them, and I honestly believe that if everyone ate the way I ate, I would just be average. This is what I think. Or if they ate the way I ate from the time, without the decades of wrecking their body with an inflammatory, PUFA-loaded diet that's wrecking their cell membranes, that's destabilizing them, that's collapsing your mitochondria, that's mutating your DNA, that's wrecking your blood vessels. If they hadn't done that for decades and they've been doing this, like if I had been doing this from the time I was a child, I'd be a Marvel comic superhero right now. Okay, because I wouldn't have had those decades of getting sicker and all this stuff happening. I mean, so this is the result of only 6 years. So I tell people, then the same thing with my wife. People see pictures of myself, my wife, and they just like, how you guys stopped age. You guys don't age. And I said, no, what we're doing is normal aging. What we were doing before was prematurely aging ourselves. That is what was happening. So all we've done is we've stopped prematurely aging. And it's this diet that does it. Because a diet that destabilizes your cell membranes, that collapses your mitochondria, that mutates your DNA, that wrecks your blood vessels, and that has you chronically hyperinsulinemic, thereby inhibiting your body's or regenerative autophagy, a diet that's doing those 5 things day after day, year after year, decade after decade, of course it's going to age you. Okay? Of course that's going to make your skin wrinkle. That's going to give you gray hair. It might make your hair fall out. Why? Because every living cell, tissue, and organ in your body needs healthy cell membranes, needs healthy mitochondria, needs healthy DNA, needs healthy blood vessels. Those are just 4 basic things that if you affect those things in your brain, why wouldn't your brain degenerate? Why wouldn't you get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? Why wouldn't your immune system function poorly if you've damaged those 4 things? And on top of that, you've also eliminated, made yourself vitamin D deficient and testosterone deficient in the process as well. Things that you need for muscle building and for immune system. If you've done all these things with your diet, why wouldn't all these bad things happen? And this is why I'm just trying to get people to shift their focus, to stop focusing so much on what I've done the last 6 years and to focus more on the fact of all the stuff I was doing the decades before that led to me being like I was 6 years ago. And that what you're seeing now is just 6 years of the absence of doing all those harmful things the Mediterranean, the anti-evolutionary Mediterranean dietary pattern does to us. Okay, that's what I am now. It's that I don't do these things. I don't dump PUFAs into my blood. I don't dump glucose into my blood. I don't hypersecrete insulin, so that allows my cells to regenerate. I don't suppress my cholesterol and thereby suppress my vitamin D and my testosterone. I don't wear sunscreen. I don't wear sunglasses. I don't do these things. I do these things intentionally because, again, we evolved with these things. Our bodies adapted to the environment. Our bodies adapted to the sun. And crazy things start happening when you start eliminating these things that our bodies evolved to do. You can mess up your sleep cycle. If you're having blue light too late at night or not seeing the infrared in the morning with the sunrise. I mean, we evolved with these things. These things we're programmed. These things basically affected our programming. And so I do all of these things because it's what humans are supposed to do. And I've never been healthier and it's all because I do what I believe humans are supposed to do.
Well, absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I'll make sure I get the link up to your Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll email you. Yes, I'll email you what I want available. Yeah. And as I said, I do want to have all the slides and the outline. Because this has been a lot. I know this has been a lot. It's a lot to absorb. But again, I want people to change the way they think because they're bombarded. They're bombarded with this. Oh, are you eating right? And automatically they're thinking lots of plants, very little red meat, lots of liquid oils. This is what automatically pops in their mind. And no, what I want to pop into their mind is that no, those are the reasons why they're sick. Those are the reasons why they're overweight. Those are the reasons why they're vitamin D deficient and testosterone deficient. Those are the reasons why their skin burns in the sun. Okay, those are the reasons. Okay, and so the first thing you need to do is stop doing that. You can stop doing that, and you can do what I do if you want, or not. Tamora doesn't eat like me. Tamora likes salad and stuff. She just likes the taste and stuff. I mean, her diet is mostly meat and eggs and stuff. But we don't eat the same. And so I'm not saying you got to do what I do. But what I am saying is you need to do what humans are supposed to do. And what humans are supposed to do is low carb, low PUFA, low meal frequency, low insulin secretion. Those are 4 things that humans, it was obligatory for humans for 99% of our time on this planet. You couldn't do anything other than those 4 things for 99% of our time on this planet. So, You know, people look at what I and say, you know, they think, oh, he's crazy, it's radical. So I say, no, what you're doing is radical. What I'm doing is a lot closer to what humans are supposed to do, what humans did for most of our time on this planet.
Well, thank you so much. That was really outstanding. And once again, everybody, I really encourage you to share this because I think Leon has articulated that perspective really well. And I really like and agree with how he's turned it around and said, you know, the illness, the chronic disease, feeling not so well is based on, it's about what's causing it. So thank you. And yeah, been amazing.